begin sewing your rows together, you're going to need to make sure you maintain this diagonal line on the branches. You want that to meet up as pretty close to perfect or exact as you can within at least a stitch. And sometimes that can be a little frustrating, especially if your 1/4 inch seam allowances are not exact all the way. So I'm going to show you a couple of strategies you can use to help to keep your angles right. So if this 1/4 inch seam allowance and this 1/4 inch seam allowance are not identical, you're going to have to do a little finagling to make that seam match up. So the first thing I'm going to do when I put my rows together is we match the center point first and then nest our seams all the way down to the other end, and then come back here and nest your seams all the way down to this end. If you start on an end and pin it straight all the way down, I think when you probably get down toward the end, especially on these longer rows with more blocks, more colored blocks, you can find yourself quite frustrated. So it is very helpful to start in the middle and pin one way and then come back and pin the other way. So let's do that. I do a rough pinning as I get them off the design wall. I do a rough pinning just to keep them straight, and I normally will sew together 2 rows, then 2 rows, then 2 rows, then 2 rows. It just makes it easier to manage for me versus a giant wad of rows as I go and get bigger. So again, when you start, I have a horrible habit of putting pins in my mouth. As we start, which way is my seam allowance? This is supposed to go this way. Okay. Again, you want to start in the center, and one seam allowance goes one way, the other seam allowance goes the other way. Let me butt those seam allowances up to one another so that they nest perfectly. You shouldn't feel any kind of ridge, and then you pin right next to the stitching in one side of the seam allowance and out the other. Here is the seam lines. I've marked them in brown with a friction marker so it'll iron away. And this is very frustrating. Come on, camera. Help a girl out. Okay. So we want to make sure that the seams are nested, and I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to put it exactly where I want to sew, right there, and I'm going to push it straight through so that it is horizontal. See that? It is horizontal, and the edges up here are even. Okay, now I need to nest it from the front. So now it's nested, and I have, the pin has shown me where that 1/4 inch is. Okay, in one side of the seam allowance and out the other, making sure that my needle, my first pin stays horizontal, and then I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to make myself a little line that we're going to call a landing strip right there. Okay, that way, and then now I can pull. Matter of fact, I'm going to do it on the other side of the pin as well. It just makes it easier for me. And then I can pull that horizontal pin out. I know when I stitch right here, I have enough light. I know when I stitch right here, I'm going to hit that. That's the idea, is to put a pin in it from the opposite side, put it through, keep it horizontal. You don't want it like this or like that. And then now you know, and then nest the seam, and you know that you're going to catch that and you're going to hit that point. I got one right here too, right there. So I know, now this one I can see because it's on my side. Okay. level up the ends at the top of the block and pin them together at the bottom. And if they're not exactly the same at the bottom, that's okay. I purposely cut my background pieces about 1/8 of an inch too large so that I've got plenty of wiggle room for squaring up. Yo, this quilting is not an exact science. And now we're going to do, now here we go again. All right, now this one, this is folded over on this one. Okay, so I'm going to fold it back. Whoop, look at that. That's no good. I need to fix that. If you have this happen, if your seams come apart, sew it beforehand or you're going to have a hole. So don't let that go thinking it'll be okay, because it won't. Oh, my needle came unthreaded. Also, garment sewing industry trick. They don't use pins in the garment sewing industry. They don't have time for that when you're sewing millions of garments. So, unless it's couture, that's a whole different ball game. Put your fingers on top, your thumb underneath, and turn it like this. That prevents that lower fabric from being pulled through too quickly by the feed dogs. Essentially, it's kind of a dummy walking foot. But you will prevent your fabric. You'll prevent your bottom fabric from being pulled in before the top fabric. So I need to aim for that. Now, if it goes off the 1/4 inch seam allowance, that's fine. It is more important to hit that point than it is to maintain the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And if you find yourself having to come in, then don't make a, that's fine. Let me draw this. So if you find yourself having to come in like that, I've over exaggerated that. This is a 1/4 inch. If you find yourself having to come in right here, don't sew back like that. All right. You want to sew back gradually like this and get back to that 1/4 inch. Okay. And make it very gradual. You will be able to fix that with the iron. See, I'm just over that 1/4 inch. However, I've got my diagonal seam tape, and there's a link to this below in the description box. I have my diagonal seam tape right here, and I'm going to make sure that it's on the 1/4 inch down here, and this will gradually now come back to that as it goes forward. See? Just like that. Okay, the moment of truth. Let's see how we did. That's pretty good right there. Let's see. We want all of our joins to be good. That looks real good. That looks pretty good. Good enough for government work, you guys. See? That's a good nest right there. That's perfect. See that one? That's how you do that. You mark it at the X on the other side with a pin, draw yourself a landing strip, and you will hit it perfectly every time. See that? That looks great. All right, I'm ready to iron this.
when you get ready to stitch the tree trunk, you want to fold it in half and measure, get your seams even, and mark center with a pin. And then you're going to put that center where the pin is. They're actually better to mark it from the outside. And then you're going to put that center with the row above it. And that's how you, and then you'll match, you'll nest the seams for the sides of the tree trunk. Okay, you guys, it's all finished. Yay! It looks pretty close. I'm pretty happy with that. I'll take you over there in just a second and give you a good look at it up close. I had a lot of fun making this, and if you're a beginner quilter, I highly encourage you to, as you can see, like in the last video, I made a mistake. I cut a piece too small and I ended up having to splice it together with another scrap, and I made it work. And by the time it's all said and done and quilted, nobody will know that that is there. And, we quilters, we kind of do things just to make it work. And so I hope you were able to glean some tips and tricks, and I think just getting the understanding of how fabric behaves and how to tame it and that kind of thing can really help. So, all right, well, let's go over there and take a look. You want to make sure you get your points right, okay? You want your lines to be straight as they go down. You want your points here nice and sharp, and you can do that by taking a pin and putting it horizontally into the next piece, leveling it out, and then pinning it to make it stick. And it works. That's a good little trick. This fabric down here is a scrap I had left over from another project that I used for the tree trunk, and I think it worked out fine. So we have something to do tomorrow, and I won't be home, but Sunday I'm going to plan on getting this onto the long arms, since I already have the backing for it and I have plenty of batting. So if you've been following along, thank you very much for sticking with me, and I hope that you want to make this. I've got links to the pattern and all of the stuff that I use in my video in the description box below. So, all right, this has been a lot of fun. I've got a Christmas tree quilt ready to go. We'll talk to you soon. Go sew something. Bye.